Hello and most welcome to 1745 of the Heidegger series. I will today talk a little bit more about, as a continuation of 1744, of you give extension to the rule. It's a cite from Philosophical Investigations, and it shows that it's actually from Wittgenstein's Nachlass, but it shows that your doings, your interactions, is what makes something real. This is pointing directly towards participation is reality. Doing the things. Standing outside, for instance, a tennis game, if we have to take the Roger Penrose example once more, is not being real in the game. Reality does not come by itself. It comes by doing things, being in them. And that goes to all sides of you. It is not only the objects, it is your thoughts, thinking, language, speech. It doesn't become real to you nor anyone else if you're not participating. Sort of, to look at it existentially, we are not disjunct from the world. Nachlass, this is also coming from Nachlass, who follows a rule has formed a new concept. For a new rule is a new way of seeing things. And that was, I would say, also abundantly clear when we spoke about the continuation of a mathematical number series. Once you find the rule, a new thing has formed, and that thing is the rule. This is very close to the Gibsonian affordances. Affordances are what you can use things for, where there is no subject using them, or they are neither objects being used. No, something much more fundamental and real. The point, if you like, the witz. That is what's deciding whether something is real or realer. This is, in a previous interview today, I interviewed an expert in Bayesian statistics. And that points towards participatory reality. And it achieves two things at the same time. Both are codependent. sharedness that with other people is that other people are doing similar things, like the players in a football game, or the two tennis player, or a marching band cooperating to make reality. It also becomes subjectively real. You can have your own thinking, so to speak, with participation. That is strictly impossible if you go down into the private language. And once more from Nachlass, you give an extension to the rule. So there's always the possibility of you extending and enlarging the rule, because it's you who understand the new order that rules the number series, constructing the rule/object of an algorithm or a mathematical equation. Later, in a manuscript from 1941, now I'm reading from Ohad Nachtomi, acting to a rule presupposes recognizing or creating some uniformity. Doing the same is connected with following a rule. One does not feel that one always has to be attentive to a hint given by a rule. On the contrary, we are not curious about what the rule will tell us now. Rather, it always tells us the same, and we do what it tells us. One could say we look at what we are doing in following a rule under the perspective of what is always the same. So sameness, as I said in 1744, is a rule. It is not something transcendental, identical, because that wouldn't be that the thing is engaged somehow. It will be cut loose, and it will be making little, if any, sense at all. And also on page 71, thus if a proof serves to form a rule, we see other events according to this rule. More precisely, we conceive them as being in accordance with this rule, or as it may happen, as not in accordance with that rule. In these remarks, proofs are ways in which our ways of seeing are fixed and thus serve for forming conceptual connections. As he notes, this must shows that someone has adopted a concept. And this is how Wittgenstein characterizes such a situation. This must means a circle. I decide to look at things in this way. Later, in the same manuscript, something similar characterizes seeing a law in a segment of a mathematical series. So you see, the circle is a rule constructed thing, or it is the rule rather. The rule makes things, or things are the rules. They are not disconnected. I get an idea, think of a football in a football game. It doesn't have life to speak of outside the game. It gains its all qualities of an object and also of something participating. Outside the game, the football is not really an object either. It doesn't have any qualities, or it has very few. It is simply not participating. I think this is showing what that, for instance, realism, reductionism, they don't really have objects. They don't have things. Because to be a thing is according to the level of participation. And it's a very, very low level of participation to be outside and studied under a microscope, or isolated, like the isolation Richard Dawkins made of the selfish gene, cut out from the body, from the cellular machinery, complete isolation. That thing has no power whatsoever. And to form a theory of it, it's barren, it's nothing. It doesn't contain anything that can bring out understanding or deepening of anything. And oddly enough, I've been mentioning Chomsky too much, but his universal grammar doesn't participate for a slightest bit. It's outside language and all our interactions, shopping, making love, fighting, believing, sensing, going to the shop buying milk. All Witze is gone from the universal grammar. It cannot signify anything. It cannot signify enough even to be wrong. It's a unique of a thing. And it's not even understandable to Chomsky himself. That could be the absolute toughest lesson. It doesn't mean anything to Chomsky. He doesn't understand to a great extent what he's talking about. It was his word, and he doesn't participate to a very great level. It's hard, or those are of course very harsh judgments, but reality stems from being in the doing. Perceiving and experiencing itself, maybe the most important thing in our lives, is absolutely dependent on the level of our participatory capacities. I think that this is easily shown in those artificial intelligence mobiles and movable creatures that learn from movement. Their perception is movement, and their objects is movement. So you will not have reality. Your experiences will be flat, non-informative. They would not tell you anything. They would not give you the pleasure of being alive even. You would have extremely little access. And you wouldn't understand language to the same level. The further you go into the Chomskyan cut-offedness, the disjunctness from reality, what makes things real. When we see an aspect, we are seeing something as something. Could sound like a trivial repetition, but what it really means is, in order to perceive, sense, feel, smell, you need aspects seeing. Not similar seeing or identity seeing. You need aspect seeing. Always being new, but still strictly following the rule and more. Because the more you've done this, the more skilled will your ability be to following the rule. You will extend it at the same time. And of course, into this also goes contradictions. And now contradictions looks quite different. The contradictions of the different size of the arrow that points in either left or right, and the arrow itself going up, are important. They are contradictory. And it could be enough for you to see the aspect of just one of those sides of the arrow to understand the directionality of the whole arrow. Seeing just one side, once you become skilled, means seeing the whole thing, or being able to access the whole thing. It's very similar to the understanding the rule for the mathematical series, to understand that an object is larger than the aspect you see, so to speak. And it's not larger, it's you recognizing the rule, and then you have the object and the concept. Before that, to a much lesser degree. And of course here also come the mistaken idea of perception, which is so persistent and model today. The very idea that we experience things inside our heads and the outside sort of impinges on us, creating phenomena within the mental sphere in a space that could be called the mental space or the perception space. Almost like a cinematic canvas or cinematic screen, cinematic screen, whereupon the reflection of reality is projected for your inner viewer, the homunculus or what it might be. And I think it's a good pointer. The word witz or point is both what you do, you decided the purpose, but oddly enough that also gives a purpose to the word, participating in the language game. It seems to be two different things going on at the very same time. The language game, you want to do something in your life world for a purpose, and at the same time you get the concept, and the concept in itself also has a point. And following a rule makes communality and sharedness possible, but it also goes for individuality. If you do not understand yourself, what you are thinking, like Chomsky possibly doesn't do, you cannot be an individual either. You have to succumb or kneel in front of conformity. And that's a conformity that's not really shared even. It's a perceived conformity of that person to behave certainly with certain gestures, using hands to sort of get the must of something that doesn't have any must to it. It could be different things, mannerisms that replaces true corporal expressions. They don't look real, they look imitated or mechanical. And they will be mechanical if the observer or you are not there to extend those expressions expressions will be weak or weekend. Not having any, like bones that does not have flesh to them, hanging loosely, shaking, making a scary sound of clappering bones. And this is something I mentioned so many times before, and this is the loss in modern academia of abstractive powers. Because if the words are no longer real to us because we do not participate in daily activity, doing the basest, lowest corporal needs, will bring out the finest abstract, because it is in the participation and the indiscriminate, so to speak, that's an exaggeration, but it needs to be all things that pertains to your life world. If they are included, the abstract and finer details can be fine. Now today they are not fine. It's just an ongoing imitation, copy-paste if you want, of concepts. But it's just the shadow of the concepts. Direct imitation doesn't give or doesn't grant participation of the person doing the imitation. They became vacuous, or lightweight maybe is a better word. They don't carry much. They're floating around. They are sort of the ruins of concepts that were alive maybe, and now they are just ruins of what they once were, unable to sort of do much justice to anything. Well, I say thank you very much, and I wish you a very pleasant morning, day, afternoon or night, whatever it might be for you. Thank you very much for listening in on this Wittgensteinian late night episode. Bye bye for now.